Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers around the world. I am Hari and I'm accompanied by Kritika to host today's discussion. We are an open community of like minded Indians from different spheres of life, from IT to accounting, from students to retired seniors living in Europe. We come together to discuss the real cash, that is, culture, art, societal issues, and history. To continue our empowering discussion series, today we have Ashish Dhar from Upword to enlighten us with his knowledge and gap. With this, I would ask Kritika to set up the motivation for today's talk. Over to you, Kritika. Thank you.
Thank you, Hari. Every time I get a ping from Upward, my first reaction is that of excitement, waiting for my first break to do a quick read. Second time around, I take a bit more time to do a deep listening, by end of which often I'm left with a lump in my throat. Why? Because it talks about the inconvenient truth. It's not easy to be unmoved when one speaks of Kashmiri and Bangladeshi Hindu genocides. It's not easy to be unperturbed when one speaks of the civilizational issue of Kashmir, or when one talks about the Hindu phobia propagated in our pop culture, the emergency years, or India's partition. It's not easy to look the other way when Upward speaks of intellectual imperialism or when they speak about the truth of Khap Panchayat. I ask Hari to do an introduction of our guest for today.
Thank you, Kritika. Ashish Dhar, it's a household name for most of us here. Let me refresh the memory for those few who are unable to place our guest. Ashish currently is having three parallel careers as co-founder of two organizations and managing the operations of the third one. First is the Pragyata e-learning platform, which provides courses by NPTEL and MHRD initiative on topics like astronomy and Ayurveda, to courses by individual stalwarts like Michael Danino on Indian ethics and values, S. Toshkani on Kashmir Shaivanism, Udav Sureka on Advaita Vedanta, and our Belgium guru Kunrad Elst on decolonization of India. Several of these courses are for free, or you can pay a little. It's like pay what you feel like. Since 2017, he has been associated with Indian Collective, where where he is currently the operations director. The most recent venture he co-founded is the Upword, which is a non-profit organization which provides knowledge platform of well-researched content in the form of short videos that articulate coherent response to major challenges faced on the planet. The content is presented by reputed domain experts, scholars, and researchers. We invite our audience to check out upward.co and become patrons. Thanks for leaving the corporate life 9 years ago, Ashish. What you do now has a much bigger impact on our society. Welcome to Sambashan, Ashish. Let's jump right into the talk by addressing the elephant in the room. I know you are Kashmiri, so I would like to ask my first questions on Kashmir about the recent development. It was announced that 6,600 Gorkhas will be given domicile certificates, and I would also like to ask. It's 11 months. It's almost 11 months since the withdrawal of Article 370. Do you see any difference? What is your take on this?
Right. Thank you, all of you, for giving me the opportunity to speak with you and your audience. Um, you've been very kind in your introduction, and I think that what I am doing resonates with a lot of people because this is a the civilizational war that we are in the midst of is felt, and it's a tangible reality for a lot of us, increasingly becoming a tangible reality. Earlier, people somehow did not feel that we are in the midst of this war, this information war. But now, more and more people, as they get access to more information, more data, as they get more aware, are beginning to feel how the traditional institutions, whether state or non-state, have failed the Hindus, and how we need, on an urgent basis, to develop our own institutions. So, upward is one such, or Indic collective, upward or Pragyata, whatever I've tried to get involved with, are these are institutions that are imagined as Hindu society institutions. So the very founding vision is that of having a voice for the common Hindu, which includes all of us. Now, coming specifically to your question, Article 370, when it was made inoperative by the Union government, I think all of us, without exception, celebrated. All patriots celebrated that day, and there was good reason to celebrate it, because it was a sort of a blot on our on India's modern history, where you had deliberately sowed the seeds of separatism through a legislation uh, which is called Article 370, and with it Article 335A. When the article was removed, uh, there was, of course, like I said, there was cause for celebration, and we said what we had to say. We were thankful to the current dispensation and all that. But now that it is close to 1 year, it is just 1 month short of 1 year when the action happened. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that there is some sort of a reversal in the direction where the state seemed to be headed. For example, there is always this. I mean, recently I heard Mr. Ram Madhav issue a statement that we will soon have the state go back to I mean the union territory again reconverted to a state. When that happens, the old power structures will just be given a new name, and there will be new actors, new puppets put in place. But the politics of the valley, the domination of the separatism, the separatist politics of the valley will continue to be the same. Jammu and Kashmir are two separate regions, and Jammu has always played second fiddle in the politics of the state. And in the given circumstances, if the union government is thinking of making a state of the union territory again, then the people of Jammu will continue to suffer. Not to mention the status quo of the refugees, that is Kashmiri Pandits. For us, nothing has changed. It is only a legal hurdle which the state has removed. But that is not even the tip of the iceberg. The real action has to begin now. After the legal hurdle has been removed, what have you done on the ground to make sure that the genocide, the centuries of genocide of Kashmiri Hindus is reversed? Where is the policy document? Where is the intent? So nothing of that sort has happened. And specifically with regard to the domicile certificates, I think a lot of noise and a lot of unfounded celebrations happened on that day when this was announced. But I saw that merely as an extension of what happened in August 2019, that the Article 370 was removed, and all the stakeholders who did not so far have a stake in the valley because of the legal hurdles, they automatically got their due recognition. Now, what paperwork happens, whether your name is in the list, whether it is not, how it is supposed to be done, all that is just procedural stuff, and I see no cause for celebrating it. We have done enough celebrations for the removal of Article 370. Now let us please look forward and talk about more tangible things. That is my submission.
Thank you, Ashish. You've made it very clear. I would now want you to spend time on what you mentioned just some while ago, that Kashmir is a history of 7,000 years. Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutra, is a Kashmiri. Charaka's book of Ayurveda comes from this region. Today's scholars like D.K. Hari take Kashmir back to Kashmirapura Vasini, and author Rakesh Kaul takes it to Kota Rani. And like I mentioned, you putting it as a territorial issue is just an issue for the last 70 years. So for our audience, could you please give a timeline from the written history of Raja Tarangani and give some statistics on how the demographical change happened? And did this happen specifically post-independence?
No. The demographic change has hardly taken place in the post-independence period. The demographic change started somewhere back in the 14th century of the Common Era, when the first Islamic ruler sat on the throne of Kashmir. And since then, it has been an unceasing uh, demographic inversion by means of forced conversions and brutal violence meted out to the people of the valley, the original inhabitants of the valley. Uh, the history of Kashmir is uh, is full of bloodshed. The medieval history, that is full of bloodshed and full of atrocities on the native inhabitants, carried out by the Islamic rulers in very simple terms. So, from being 100% Indic community, it has come to a point where it is no longer where you have difficulty finding Hindus or other uh, Indic religionists in the valley. So the last nail in the coffin was the 1990 eviction of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley. And after that, it has become officially completely Islamic in nature, right? So uh, the population, the demographic composition of the population of the valley does not even have representative Hindu character. It doesn't even have those handful of numbers. It's just now it is actually handful. Now you can actually name them. If you draw up a list, you'll probably have uh, those running into a few thousands. That is the number of Hindus remaining in Kashmir. It is no different from how it is in Pakistan or even Afghanistan. Right? Even in Afghanistan, you will have some Hindus, but that is how Kashmir has turned out to be. And this has happened not in the recent history, but right from the start of the Islamic rule in Kashmir.
Thank you, Ashish. Uh, we, we we can clearly understand that that's a big civilization issue. It's saddening to hear these issues. When we talk about Kashmir, we often hear about the terrorist-related activities. Are these primarily created by external factors who try to destabilize India, or do they have the support of the locals as well?
Right. So I think the question is framed a little erroneously, because when I say that Kashmir is a civilizational problem, the implications of that statement are that Kashmir is in the midst of a civilizational battle. What is a civilizational battle, and which are these civilizations which are fighting with each other, so to speak? So Kashmir is a battleground between the Indic civilization and the Islamic civilization. And the Islamic civilization is a global force. We know that its center is in the Middle East, but there are Islamic republics all over the world, and there are quasi-Islamic republics with significant Muslim population also, who may not actually be officially Islamic states, but by virtue of their demographic composition, they are practically Muslim countries. So it's a global civilization. Contrast that with the Indic civilization, which is more or less restricted to India and perhaps Nepal. And therefore, we do not have a global alliance of any kind. So when we say that Kashmir is whether it is being destabilized by external actors or the local population, it is both. When Pakistan tries to destabilize or flare up the situation in Kashmir, it has its role to play, but then there are agents of the Islamic civilization within the population of the valley itself who are locals. These locals are the people who were involved in and who were responsible for the eviction of Kashmiri Hindus from the valley. So you cannot give them a free pass. Therefore, it is a bit of both, but the agency and the primary responsibility for what has happened in Kashmir is at the door of the Kashmiri Muslim, not anywhere, not anyone else, because they have chosen to fight on behalf of their religion as opposed to their nation.
Ashish, I'll take something from your answer before. So you said 1990, since 1990, the Kashmir has become a Muslim majority state, right? And to add to that, globally speaking, Hindus are a minority, correct? So, there is no definition of minority in constitution. What is the locus standi of the Minority Affairs Ministry in that case?
Well, actually, this whole business of minority versus majority, there are a few strange aspects to it. One is, of course, the well-known aspect, which says that majority and minority should be defined at the state level. Right? If we were, as Kashmiri Hindus, we were in a minority in Kashmir, or if Hindus are in a minority in the entire state of, or in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, for all practical purposes, they are living they're living as minorities in that state. So they should be defined that way, as opposed to saying that, okay, India as a whole is 75% Hindu or whatever the number is, and therefore Hindus living in any state are by default majority. So that's one huge error that has been perpetrated on. It has been done by proper planning. The other issue is, even at the national level, when we say that Hindus are a majority, we live in an era where national borders and national sovereignty is on the decline. We live in an era of transnational corporations, of international trade agreements, of identities becoming global identities as opposed to just national. We're not even talking about the state here. So in this sort of in an epoch of this kind, it is ridiculous to accuse the Hindu of being in the majority, because in the global scenario, like I just explained, Hindus are in a minority and we have no allies in the global context. Therefore, everything must be done to protect our culture, to protect our interests, because we are living under the hegemony of civilizations and powers that are majoritarian in nature, namely the modern West, the Islamic civilization, and and the other major civilizations and forces operating globally. So we have nowhere else to turn to. So therefore, the Minority Affairs Ministry in India is only a lever in the hands of the global powers to perpetrate and to continue the hegemony that they want to keep a hold on all over the world.
Thank you, Ashish. I think government should seriously look into those ministries. Coming back, we have learned that there are civilization issues in Kashmir. There are external and internal factors who are trying to destabilize India. But speaking about the civilization issue, we don't read, you have mentioned things from 14th century, but we don't come across this in our history books. Our history books excludes the ethnocide committed in India from 711 current era, and Bahmani killings had yearly targets of 10,000 Hindu heads, which in 1399 Taimur achieved it in one day. Thereafter, there was 200 years of pillage and plunder by the British. Why is it hidden or not spoken? Elsewhere in the world, for example, in Europe, negationism is a big no-no. We have to address the past, however it is, and we should accept it. But there is clear contrary to that. What are the efforts undertaken by the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in India to address this?
Look, I don't know of any truth and reconciliation going on anywhere in India. It may be a committee somewhere sitting somewhere. What truth and reconciliation is happening is uh, anybody's guess. I simply have no idea what the committee stands for and what they're doing, because there is nothing which has moved on the ground. It should actually start with the textbooks, um, especially the history, where entire an entire period has been whitewashed and served with a silver silver coating, so to speak, as some kind of a secular heaven, the Mughal rule and stuff like that. But those myths need to be they need to be rejected and they need to be corrected now. And there is enough evidence. This is not some conspiracy theory that we are talking about, right? There is enough evidence, primary source based evidence, archaeological evidence, literary evidence, all sorts of things are there which establish that the period, the medieval period of India was a terrible time for the natives of this land, and then followed by colonization and the imperial era. I argue that we are still living in under the imperial era, except that the levers and the appearances have changed, which is why we call it intellectual imperialism, right? So earlier it was a political sort of imperialism where you actually had governments taking control of entire lands, and when they ravaged the lands and when everything that they had to take, they took, and it became economically unviable for them to continue, they left. But now they have their interests have changed because the world has changed, and now they try to exercise those controls through these narratives that they promote. Otherwise, there is no reason why the Hindus of India would not have the same kind of status and the same kind of acceptance in the narrative of the wrong deeds of the past, as the black Americans do today. These days, the Black Lives Matter and all sorts of movements are going on in the US. Um, Hindus have a longer and even more solid case for reconciliation and um, for the truth to come out, but that is not happening because we are too um we are still in a position of of being oppressed, and we do not have our institutions to speak for us, and we are still dependent on this global hegemony that I just spoke about for giving us legitimacy. So when we say, for example, if I say that Kashmiri Hindus, and I'll use the word Brahmins here, for example, Kashmiri Brahmins have been at the receiving end of centuries of oppression. But the moment I use the word Brahmin, immediately someone will say that, oh, you are actually promoting the caste system. You are the oppressor. But I'll say, look, man, we are talking about a 700 period where Brahmins have been exploited in Kashmir. They've been killed, they've been raped, they've been looted, they've been converted. All this has happened, and this is recorded history. But I will not, my version, which is not even a version, which is objective fact, but my statements will not be taken seriously unless some white guy sitting somewhere in an American university says, yeah, okay, you can take his word. So this imbalance of power continues today, and we don't have our own narrative. And if this is not imperialism, I don't know what is. So to summarize, uh, again, I don't know what the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is doing, or if it even exists now. I mean, I'd heard about it some time back, but I don't know if it exists now. But there is nothing that has moved on the ground, and I would expect that the first thing that the government would do would be to correct the textbooks, which has not happened. So we are, we are at square one, and we haven't moved an inch.
Ashish, is this something that Upward would like to take up? Like, can it be a mission of truth and reconciliation to be legislated? If it's a mission of upward, Sambash would be very happy and glad to participate and support you in this effort.
Indeed, I mean our objective is to speak the truth, speak the objective truth, and to tell our story, right? Whether it is the story of the female devotees of Ayyappa in Kerala, whether it is the story of Kashmiri Hindus, whether it is the story of Bangladeshis, the Bangladeshi Hindus who are suffering under the tyranny of Islamists in Bangladesh, or whether it is the story of Hindus in Pakistan. So these are the stories that we want to tell, right? There is enough academic work to also give credibility to these stories. However, the state needs to get involved. The Indian state, which is what I recently submitted in one of my recent videos, that unless the Indian state actually embraces its identity, its civilizational identity, and says that, look, we are a civilization and this is our responsibility towards our people. The people are the embodiments of the civilization. The territory is just a piece of land, right? So the mindset of the Indian state has to change from territorial to civilizational for it to be able to tell these stories and give credibility to our voices. If that is not happening, I don't know how much we as individuals and as independent institutions can do against the sort of behemoths that have been built in the last century by the West and the other civilizations.
Can we not become a sort of pressure group? Because it's not just about correcting the history per se, but it's also correcting the history of our mathematics. Like there is no mention of Brahmagupta, Aryabhatta, or even the most recent scientists like T.A. Saraswati Amma and so on. So I think, can we not build ourselves into a pressure group to get the state into action?
That is the intent, and that is exactly what we want to do. But for a pressure group to be effective, the entity that you are putting pressure on has to respond. I don't see the response coming in any way, right? I mean, the voice of the majority community in India is treated as traffic noise. It is always there in the background. It doesn't matter. It's a distraction. The state seems to be oriented towards a totally different vision that we have no stake in, right? So if this equation is not corrected, nothing will come out of this, and we are indeed headed for a bleak future there. But yeah, I mean, from our side, we can always strategize and we can say that we'll be a pressure group, but the other side has to respond. So yeah, the ball is in their court.
Thank you, Ashish. We have a question from the audience, Vibha. She is asking, with the abrogation of the Article 370, how do you feel as a Kashmiri Hindu? What kind of resistance is expected, and what options does one have as a Kashmiri Hindu to go back and live a good life in Kashmir?
The abrogation of Article 370 is a mere symbolic progress for us, for Kashmiri Hindus. Speaking on behalf of Kashmiri Hindus here, not for other Hindus. As a Kashmiri Hindu, I am happy that it happened, but I am happy for other Hindu communities and not for myself. I am happy that today a Tamilian, a Maharashtrian, a Haryanvi can buy land in Kashmir and settle in Kashmir, at least on paper, right? So I am happy for them. But as far as my community is concerned, we are facing an imminent extinction. Cultural extinction is just on the cards for us. It is right there, staring us in the face. For us, going back is not a question of changing the legal status. It is a question of first addressing the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is the jihad that was unleashed in Kashmir in the late 80s. And the further, cause of that, the deeper cause of that is the demographic equation in the valley, the demographic composition of the valley. If nothing is done to change it, and I'm not saying even change it, I understand that there are huge hurdles to getting that done. But if the intent is not stated, if the Indian state does not say that, look, this is how we will reclaim Kashmir, this is the narrative that we are going to build, right? This is how we will highlight the problems of the Kashmiri Hindus in the international forums, and slowly work our way towards reclaiming Kashmir civilizationally, not territorially. Territorially, it is a part of India. I mean, there's no denying that. But civilizationally, how do you reclaim Kashmir? So unless there is a clear roadmap given out by the Indian state, there is no question of return at all, because anyone who goes back, even if we go back as a group, almost the entire group of Kashmir, anywhere in the world, if we decide, okay, we'll come back and go to Kashmir, we will be hostages there. It will be a problem for the Indian state, like we were hostages back in the 90s. I mean, there is nothing which has changed. In fact, things have only worsened because people have grown more radical. Earlier, at least, the earlier generations of Kashmiri Muslims had reasonable interaction with Kashmiri Pandits, right? They were friends, they were colleagues, they studied together, worked together, they did business together. Now, in the valley, there are no Kashmiri Hindus. So who do they interact with? They don't even think of us as humans. They've dehumanized us. They have sold them stories. They've sold stories of Kashmiri Hindus being, vermin to their kids. They're very small children. They think of Kafirs, the Hindus, as second class, as subhuman species. So that is the kind of radicalization that is mainstream in Kashmir. How do you tackle that? That is not going to happen like that. So unless the state actually says this, unless at least in the international forums starts talking about the Kashmiri Hindu genocide, then we'll have an indication that, okay, these guys are serious about it, right? And then we can think of how to, how to negotiate, how to work with the state. Secondly, till the time that we go back, I think the most practical thing, the most pragmatic approach to saving the Kashmiri Hindu culture, if the government were interested, would be to settle us in temporary communities outside of Kashmir, right? Like they've done with the Tibetans. The time for that is actually gone, but even now, it's never too late. Like the Tibetans are, they live together as communities, right? Sizable communities, whether it is Dharamshala, whether it is near Bangalore, whether it is Mussoorie, or, wherever they are. I think Manali, yeah. So if we don't live as communities, our culture will die. So if we can be settled as, if we can be given that incentive and said that, okay, here is a huge stretch of land where 1,000 families can settle together. This is outside Delhi, this is in Greater Noida, wherever, I don't know. So if that happens, then probably there is a chance that the culture will be saved. Otherwise, we are looking at cultural extinction.
Thank you, Ashish. We have reached halfway in our show. So we're going to do 2 rapid fires in this discussion today. So announcing it to the audience. So please be prepared and start putting your questions for the second rapid fire, which would be towards the end. Which would be about the tongue-in-cheek questions that people just put at us, I'll say around office lunch or somewhere in a cocktail drink after work party, which often leaves us.
I'll need to grab a beer then.
And it'll be a Belgian one. It's on us. So, for example, a question like, are you vegetarian because of your religion? So this part of funny rapid fire needs to come in the end, and where Ashish is going to help us with quick witty comebacks. But now we're going to do a very serious sort of rapid fire, because Ashish, we know that the secessionist, that's a hard word, secessionist ideas, ideologies are not just one province that is impacted. It's not just about Kashmir, but it's there in several different states, and every state has its own fault line. So it's a quick rapid fire. We would like to ask you, like, give us the provincial fault lines for each of the states that we are going to ask you. So what you have to say is the issue with the tea capital of India and perhaps the world, Assam.
What do I have to say about it? Oh,
Yeah,
it's
provincial fault lines.
right. So the fault lines are clear. There are illegal infiltrators from Bangladesh. There are the native Assamese. There are the Bengali-speaking community, mostly of Hindus, and this sort of divides the state into three. And while while there is often the Assamese and the Bengali-speaking fighting among each other, the other group has sort of taken control over the territory.
Thanks for the icebreaker, Ashish. So next one is God's own country, Kerala.
Well, Kerala again, the three major religions: Christianity, Islam, and Hindus. That's the religious fault lines, and then there is, of course, the ideological fault line that comes with communism. So there are communists and non-communists. I think the communists have very cleverly grabbed state power and have been in power for a long time, and they've been allying with the other two communities. Again, as you can see in the case of Sabrimala and various other traditions, the communists have been very quick to marginalize the Hindu community and ally with the other civilizational forces. Despite their fault lines between them, they've built bridges across just to marginalize the Hindus.
Okay, the next one is the fault line for the party town, Goa.
Again, I mean, yeah, Goa is a famous case between the church and the temple. Goa has some wonderful temples which I did not know of, right? I mean, since this is a rapid fire round, I can answer it differently. My knowledge of Goa before visiting the state was from the movies, and it was always projected as some padri speaking, "Oh man, tum kya karta hai," and stuff like that. So I thought that this was a completely Portuguese influenced place. But when I went to Goa, I was so surprised. First of all, I didn't know that the demographics were somewhat evenly balanced, and the amazing temples there. I had no idea. I mean, in the pop culture, it was shown as if Goa is completely Vasco da Gama ke baad to koi bacha hi nahi. So yeah, that's the fault line there.
Thank you, Ashish. What do you think about the heritage Tamil Nadu?
So Tamil Nadu is like my second home because I've done my engineering from Vellore and I've worked in Tamil Nadu, lived in Chennai for 3 years after that. So 7 years in all, I've been in Tamil Nadu. The classic Dravidian versus non-Dravidian. But you know what? I mean, despite all that, despite the decades of toxicity that the politics of the state has, forcefully injected into a lot of people there, it is still an amazingly Indic, an amazingly indigenous place still, and a lot of proud Hindus you always meet there. And while I have to be very honest, during my stay in Tamil Nadu, I did not even once feel that I was being looked at as an outsider, Aryan, or whatever. So my experience has been very positive, though I'm well aware of the politics there and the silent exodus of Brahmins from there, for example, is a well-known fact. But I think it is still salvageable, and kudos to the Tamilian people for that.
Ashish, I yet again win against my North Indian husband. I tell him every time a North Indian has an awakening, it's because of Tamil Nadu.
Yes, yeah, it is fairly accurate.
Thank you for that. You can have more beers on me now. Now, the last one we have was the fault line of Delhi, of course, the capital.
Delhi has no fault lines. Delhi is a fault only. Delhi has no culture. It's just, random people thrown into this small space. I don't know. It's about to 20 million people, and all they're doing is just earning their livelihood. No one cares for anything. They're just honking. There is uh, traffic. There is pollution, and it's an absolute cultureless place. Though there are many state-sponsored cultural institutions where you have wonderful music concerts and great musicians coming, Indian classical musicians from all over the country performing here, sometimes for free. You have Lalit Kala Academy, you have the National School of Drama, all these great institutions which were set up by the Congress. And so, despite that, the people of the city are basically just put into a melting pot, and there is no identity.
Thank you, Ashish. That was very good. Uh, we have a question from our audience, Mohinder. I think he is triggered with one of your responses saying what is done is not enough. His question is, the current government doesn't have the political will. Many initiatives are just like only foam and there's no beer. What is needed from the state in terms of execution, in terms of tangible steps?
So I've spoken about this often in various contexts. Um, the root cause, to restate the root cause, is the fact that the Indian civilization, the Indian state, thinks of India as a territory that it has to protect. Because it has shunned its civilizational identity, it does not have a narrative for itself. It does not have a self image, right? A story that it tells itself. We all live a story as individuals. Even as collectives, we live a story. There is a grand narrative that Mr. Rajiv Malhotra speaks about. The grand narrative. What is the grand narrative of India, right? So that grand narrative of the Indian state is its civilizational narrative, which is missing. Now, I totally agree with this question. If you look at how the Citizenship Amendment Act was brought about, right? And you will see that, even though it appeared to be a great step in the direction of that civilizational nationhood, because you were finally acknowledging the fact that you have a responsibility towards the Hindu minorities, persecuted Hindus in your neighboring countries, the Islamic countries. So you were acknowledging that. But at the same time, you hadn't thought it through, right? So when the CAA came in, I knew, when we were discussing, as an individual, I could sense, I knew from the start that this is going to lead to a huge backlash, right? But I assumed that the Indian state will have a decent narrative to sell. Actually, sell is the wrong word, but forward. We are not selling snake oil. We are not selling a lie. So we can just state what is the truth in this case, right? So, but there was no second order thinking at all from the leadership. You just got in a bill like you did in the case of Article 370, and then you waited for the mad crowd to run over you. They sat for 3 months in Shaheen Bagh, and finally you had to send a cabinet level national security advisor to convince them to get up. He did the role of a constable. I'm so sorry to be saying such things, but that is how it is. That is the harsh truth. So the fact is that legally, when you appear to be moving in a civilizational direction, deep inside, right, actually on the ground, there is no movement. So whatever is happening basically is that you're trying to say that, okay, we've ticked off these things from our agenda. Like Ram Mandir ho gaya, ye ho gaya, ye. Bhai, Ram Mandir to ho gaya. But what about the Places of Worship Act? Because what you've essentially exchanged the Ram temple's construction for is the claim on all your ancient temples that were destroyed, right? So the Places of Worship Act says that, okay, now you forget about it. Ab tumko Ram Mandir de diya, now you forget about it. That is not how the state should should hoodwink the majority community. This is exactly what is happening. So this wish list, ticking of these items in the wish list is not what real progress is. And to make real progress, I think they will have to be explicit about the identity of the Indian state as civilization, in the mold of the Chinese state or in the mold of the Israeli state, right? Where they say that we are a Jewish state. We have responsibility to the Jewish people. It does not make you a terrorist state, right? It does not make you an aggressive state. It just makes you a Hindu state, and there should be no shame in saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed, Ashish. I would like to say that upwards, one of the most viewed videos is by Richard Benkins, American human activist who speaks about the quiet case of ethnic cleansing in Bangladesh. And to our surprise, the anti-CIA doesn't seem to die at all, even on this date. Could this be related to what is being projected in our pop culture, in our movies and OTT, the Hindu phobia, the names of the villains being replaced with Hindu names, crime scenes happening in front of Hindu insignia? Uh, why do we have this narrative of, look away from our past, the past was gory or it was bad, let's break the shackles, move forward? Are we losing because of this perception that is built? Are we losing the war of perception here?
I don't remember who said this, but this is a profound statement that I've quoted uh, at various talks, and that is that we do not live in the past. The past lives in us, right? So we cannot wish away our past. There is no way to do it. Even those people who say that we should look forward instead of backwards are actually doing that because of the forces of the past making them do that. We are products of our past. The present is a function of the past. The future is a function of the present, right? So this whole business of saying, no, 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 we should not look at the past is basically saying that whatever has happened to you, forget about it, and now you do what we tell you to do. Again, in imperialism, right? So that is continuing. And pop culture is a space which is essentially a space of memes and tropes. You are basically, talking about the masses who do not have time for scholarly inquiry and interrogation and investigation into matters like academics do. So pop culture is that space. You make a movie, someone goes there for their 3 hours or 2 hours of entertainment and comes back thinking of certain things, and that percolates to their subconscious, the subconscious mind. So that is the power of pop culture. And in the pop culture, consistently, anti-Hindu imagery, anti-Hindu messaging is the staple, right? So the natural question to ask, and any self-respecting community would do that, is why are we being consistently targeted? And the answer is pretty self-evident. You are being targeted because you are being seen as a thorn in the path of whatever domination, right? Whether it is consumerist culture, whether it is the culture of religious expansionism, or whether it is the communist ideology which wants to create a one world of the proletariat or whatever it is. So if that is the aim, then your heterogeneity, your diversity is a problem. And so to negate that, you will have to be implanted with mental viruses, in a sense, which destroy your own self-belief. And that is what has been happening. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not to say that, there are evil-minded geniuses sitting somewhere and deciding. This is all a part of, social interaction. This is how communities, this is how civilizations interact with each other. It is not just a clash. It is also sometimes cooperation. But if you are two different entities, there is likely to be some friction. And if you happen to be a doormat of a community, then everyone will come and trample on you, which is what is happening with Hindus. We need to stand up for ourselves.
Thank you, Ashish. I think we should stand, and it's the right time to stand up against this. We have an interesting question from one of our audience, Mr. Subramanian. He thinks a common man doesn't think this is a civilization issue. There are people who simply skip the free videos and think I am living peacefully. World is peaceful. Even listening to this is unnecessary. Fighting for the forgotten past is not the breadwinner. But can't agree to the intellectual imperialism. And I have to interact with the current society and learn to live with it. What's your word for them?
So there are two ways in which I would deal with this sort of a problem. One is that I am not, or when I say I am speaking on behalf of anyone who would want our community collectively to stand up for our rights. So I am not a Christian evangelist who's out there saving people, right? Pardon my French, but I'm saving my ass, my own ass. So whatever we are doing is with a deep commitment and not just skin, but our very flesh in the game, right? We are doing it for ourselves. I don't self-identify as an activist, because an activist typically in these days is someone who's, looking at a remote cause, somewhere some people are dying and, I want to do something because I'm in a position of privilege. I am not in a position of privilege, right? So therefore, I am fighting for who I am. I am fighting for my own children's future. I cannot imagine how the country, if it were to be, if it were to go under the Breaking India forces and disintegrate, and the dharma of the land goes away, then I can't even imagine the nightmare that would follow, right? So given that, I am just doing it for myself, and so should everyone, right? Whoever has awakened to reality, it is incumbent upon them to save their own skin. Secondly, I think it is like the question of consent, right? The question of consent is always dicey. What is consent? Because if we make a deal, if I sell you something, right, and you buy, let's say, a phone from me, and the phone happens to be faulty, but the fault is not very apparent right in the beginning, I can sell it to you at a higher price, right? Which you will later discover that this is a problem with the phone. So the transaction happened with your consent, but actually you were duped, right? So similarly, if there are people who believe that they can live without bothering about all this, one day reality will come checking on them, right? And till then, what we can do is to continuously hammer the message, say that, look, this is what is happening. Wake up, wake up. And chances are that there are a percentage of those people might actually see the light. If that happens, well and good. Otherwise, we continue to do our business of saving our own skin. That is the logic that I follow, at least.
Indeed, that's what most of us are doing, and a little bit of extending our lives, and probably trying to support initiatives like yours. We still want to hope like we are doing something that is going to be useful, or that is going to be nurtured by the next generation. So even though in the end of the day, we're all here to save our own little lives. That's true. I would now come to a question about the Western media's coverage about India. So the levels of Hinduphobia, if you take the common websites here, without naming anything, without naming the big ones. Of course, I'm very sure and confident, Ashish, that you will not shy away from naming these. The levels of Hinduphobia seems unwarranted. The way they cover as a simple news item, like the youngest chief minister of the most populous state of India as a militant monk. it seems very unnecessary. So what can the media houses on the other side of the spectrum do to counterbalance? What is Upward's approach, and what would you like to see from what's there to improve there? What's your personal take?
So it's a razor's edge of sorts that we are walking on, because uh, we live in a globalized world and we need to engage with the opponents and the adversaries all the time. Yet we need to draw a line on where we will stop responding. Um, so the approach that we take at Upward is fairly straightforward. It is that we tell our own stories. We tell our stories as objectively as possible. We base it on the truth, uh, and we do not react. We only talk about things from our perspective without compromising on the truth, right? If it offends people, so be it. If people like it, that's very nice. But the important thing is that we need to articulate our standpoint clearly and coherently. Uh, you mentioned media houses on the other end of the spectrum. I don't know which media houses you had in mind, but if you're talking about the Indian media, I think that the Indian media uh, is in absolute shambles. It does not. I think it is irredeemable. The kind of discourse that they promote, the kind of discussions that they have on TV, the kind of stuff that gets written on their websites, it is very shallow. It is almost as if some white man were dictating what they have to write. Right? There is no originality. They are not even well read. Um, I don't know how things have come to such a pass, but be that as it may, from our side, the effort has to always be to clearly articulate, to not compromise on the truth, and in some sense, speak truth to the power.
Thank you, Ashish. To continue that question, but on a slightly different note, I would like to ask you a question about the current government. Though the current government claims to be Hindutva, there are many instances when the government and the party stayed silent. For to quote a few, for the issues like Sabrimala and Sadhu lynching, there has been a constant voice by Hindus against current government, but common perception is they are pro-Hindus. So how to balance between constructive criticism while not letting the moral of the government down?
I don't, I don't, I don't think that what we say affects the morale of the government in any way, because if it did, then things would have been different. Uh,
But,
but
but
my policy is very simple, which is that uh, we have voted this government to power, right? And with that ends our responsibility to um, to sort of give it a cushion. We have given them an opportunity, right? They are placed in power for a certain kind of energy that they bring towards the goals that we have imagined together. That these are the goals that we need to achieve. So the moment they come to power, they tend to slack off for various reasons, whether it is slacking off or whether it is compromising. I don't want to get into that because I don't know. But as a voter, I think it is my responsibility to continuously question the government and say that, look, this is how it is supposed to be. And this is what you've done. If you've brought in the CAA and then taken 10 steps backward, why did you bring it all? Bring it at all in the first place? If you had to make Jammu and Kashmir a state again and give back the keys to those separatists and the greedy politicians of the valley, then why did you have to remove Article 370? These are logical questions to ask. Now, if people who support the government, if they say that no, 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 this will affect their morale. No, 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 we should not do, because what other options do we have? I completely disagree with that approach, because then that means that you have given up your own, the concern for your own good. Uh, you are basically saying that I will vote and then I will close my eyes. That is not how even democracy is supposed to run. Forget about civilization, forget about the big things, dharma and all that we spoke about. Pure democracy is participative in nature. You vote, it is a transactional relationship, and then you question your leaders and say that why did this not happen and why are you doing this when you had said this, right? So that's 101 of democracy, and I don't think that it is wise at all to give up on that just because someone says that, oh, then you do want to bring back Congress. No, I don't want to bring back Congress. I don't want to bring the communists. I don't want to bring in a khichdi sarkar, but I still want to question Mr. Modi for the promises that he's appearing to be breaking. So that's my point.
Wow, Ashish, time has really flown by, as evident in the clock that stands behind you. That's when
that clock is always showing the wrong time because there's some magnet somewhere there. So whatever clock I put there, it shows the wrong time.
But that's exactly how we feel like. You joined at around 1:20, and that's where it stopped, and we didn't realize that the hour has gone by. We'll go to the final rapid fire. We were not able to complete a lot of questions. We had other areas to cover, but nevertheless, we'll have a second round.
I think I overshot my time.
No, it was all appropriate. I think we've covered a lot of ground on Kashmir and intellectual war and the Western media and alternate government and all that. We still have missed a good 5 areas that we had in mind to. Probably we were having too much on our plates to get past it. It definitely looks like we will have a round 2 with you. So let's close off with the fun rapid fire. So Ashish, we want you to give us some witty, tight comebacks when we are posed these questions. The first one is the one that I gave as example. So, are you vegetarian because of your religion? What does wise Ashish have to say in one line?
Yeah, this actually got asked to me once by a Britisher who said that do you not? It was actually with regard to beef, not exactly vegetarian, but he asked me, are you do you not eat beef by choice or because of religious reasons? So my answer to him was that I do not eat beef. I choose not to eat beef for religious reasons.
The next one is...
I don't see how that is an either or situation.
Thank you, Ashish. The next one is your last name from your caste?
Actually, I don't know, but probably, yeah. I don't know. I mean, this thing with surnames is not too big in Kashmir because we had we had more urgent issues to deal with.
Okay. The third one is, what is the dot on your head?
The dot on my head is a symbol of the wrath of Shiva. And if you ask another stupid question, it will burn you.
I don't know if I can still ask this question, but yeah, I'm asking. I hope not to be. But you are Hindu. You speak Hindi, but you speak Tamil. So who are you?
Well, it is possible for people to be different things. Like you are a male. And you have a family, you are a father, and you are also a football player. So similarly, I am a Hindu who speaks Hindi and also Tamil.
Okay, this one, I need to warn you, I got burned by this. I am from Azad Kashmir.
Actually, the best thing to ask back would be, are they still treating you as badly as they used to? So yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that this Azad Kashmir thing, it's again the same point that I was making about narratives, right? Just the appropriation of the word. It's actually Pakistan occupied Kashmir, right? For us, and that is how it is. That is how it is, objectively speaking. If we were to actually pore through the records of history and then, say that, okay, this is what happened, then the Pakistanis came and then we had to drive them out. And then we finally decided that this part is going, okay, we are not going to fight anymore till international bodies come in and, there is some sort of resolution for the benefit of the people in the region and all that. But it is Azad Kashmir because that's the narrative. And who controls the narrative? It is the global civilizations, not us. We are always at the receiving end.
Thank you, Ashish. Another question on a milder note. Is your marriage arranged?
Yes. The marriage is arranged because the marriage, our marriages are not just about two people finding each other physically attractive, but it's about families getting together. So yeah, it needs to be arranged. It can't happen just like that.
Thank you so much, Ashish. It was really a fun round. I'm going to ask Hari to give a vote of thanks to our guest today and probably conclude the session.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to all of you.
Yeah, Ashish, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm really moved by your videos. You're doing a wonderful job. Please keep up the good work. You will definitely have all our support. Yeah, you're doing an amazing job. Kudos to you.
Thank you.
I know you're also a musician. Can you please sign us off with a song with your guitar, please?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I am not a professional musician. I just picked up the guitar in college, so I'll just play a line or two. One thing. So this is dedicated to our great Chief Minister of Delhi. केजरी कितना तू बेशर्म हाय, जिस थाली में खाए उसमें थूके जाए। केजरी ओढ़े फटा मफलर हाय, अफवाहें उड़ाए टोपी पहनाए। यहाँ झूठी डिग्री का ताना, वहाँ चारा चोर से याराना। यहाँ झूठी डिग्री का ताना, वहाँ चारा चोर से याराना। धोखेबाज नेता कहीं है, नहीं देखा तुझ सा कमीना मगर केजरी कितना तू बेशर्म हाय, जिस थाली में खाए उसमें थूके जाए। केजरी ओढ़े फटा मफलर हाय, अफवाहें उड़ाए टोपी पहनाए। As you can see, I'm a little rusty, but
oh, it was marvelous, lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Namaste.